Hey, how's it going everyone? Welcome back to Freddy or Not, where my name is Freddy and I'm ready to dive into today's topic, which is FNAF. In a previous video, I covered a timeline from FNAF 1 through 6 and UCN, but today I'm going over the modern era of games, so like and subscribe because today I'm going to explain this FNAF security breach timeline once and for all. Brief recap for those that are new. There was a serial killer named William Afton who killed a bunch of kids whose souls now possess animatronics. William Afton and the haunted animatronics die when the restaurant they were in burns down. Most of the characters go on to rest in peace after this, but Afton is left in a weird purgatory thing where he's being tortured by one of his victims for the rest of eternity. Okay, all caught up? Good. So years after FNAF 6 Fire ended the franchise, Fazbear Entertainment decided to bring it back from its grave. Fazbear Entertainment hired an indie developer to make video games based on the events that happened. This was in order to make light of the situation and frame it all as silly rumors in order to relaunch. At this point, Fazbear was trying to make a VR game, but a beta tester, who we'll call Tape Girl, discovered some strange events that were happening. It seems they had scanned some old circuit boards found at the pizzeria while making this game, but they unleashed a virus into the system. I can't imagine how. Tape Girl then relays the story of how people playing the game started acting weird. This includes the beta tester before her named Jeremy, who tried cutting his face in order to escape. And as a result, Tape Girl took over and eventually found a way to neutralize the virus by splitting it up across 16 tapes, rendering it harmless. So in the video game Help Wanted, we play as a beta tester and we discover this information through those very same tapes, which is a very counterproductive system, might I add. And around this time while we're assembling the tapes, that's when the glitch starts revealing itself. This virus monster resembles a hand-sewn bunny suit, and we'll eventually come to know this entity by the name Glitchtrap. It seems that the circuit board that was scanned came from William Afton's suit or something. It was likely a circuit board with his agony on it. Agony being the dark reflection of a remnant made from bad emotions. Regardless, this virus Glitchtrap seemed to want to be like Afton, hence the bunny suit resembling Spring Bonnie. And in the end, we assemble all 16 tapes and Glitchtrap possesses our body. Now from emails from FNAF AR and information from Security Breach, we find out that this previous beta tester was named Vanessa, and what Glitchtrap has done is create an alter ego in her named Vanny, and Vanny, after making herself a bunny suit, was now working to bring Glitchtrap into the real world. Here we get to FNAF AR. So FNAF AR is probably one of two things. It's either an app, like in real life, or it's an actual delivery service creating hundreds of versions of the animatronics and shipping them off to people's houses for the purpose of gathering remnant. For my sanity, I'm going to assume the first option, but technically the second option is possible. At this point, Fazbear Entertainment was building what they called a pizzaplex, and this pizzaplex would feature a bunch of brand new animatronics. These animatronics included an alligator named Montgomery Gator, or Monty for short, a wolf named Roxanne Wolf, or Roxy for short, and Glamrock Chica and Glamrock Freddy. There was also a daycare attendant that goes by Sun when the lights are on, but switches to a completely different personality named Moon when the lights are off. But it is later revealed that the daycare attendant was likely originally called Eclipse, and the virus split him into the Sun and Moon personalities. Finally, there's a giant DJ named DJ Music Man. It is later revealed, however, that Glamrock Bonnie was also previously an animatronic at the Pizzaplex, but we'll talk more about him later. Anyway, Vanessa gets transferred to the Pizzaplex as a security guard, and after gaining access to the security system, uploaded the Glitchtrap virus into the Pizzaplex. At this point, I'd like to talk a little about the Glitchtrap virus. So the book explains there's something called the Mimic 1 virus. All you really need to know is that this virus was created to be able to mimic things. And it seems that what was in the circuit board was most likely the Mimic 1 virus, and Afton's agony. So the virus is mimicking Afton. He trying to be Springtrap for real. The books also explain that the virus, once introduced to the animatronics, exaggerated their personalities. Basically, they got flanderized, which is why when we meet the animatronics, Roxy is vain, Chica's a glutton, and Monty's a violent jock. Now, Vanny wasn't the only servant of Glitchtrap. There was another one that went by Patient 46, and using information from the books, this person was also known by the name GGY, and had all the high scores in the Pizzaplex. And I'm cutting straight to the chase. It's heavily implied that the little boy from Security Breach, Gregory, yeah, he's most likely GGY. That means at some point he got taken over by Glitchtrap too. Maybe he played the VR game, who knows. But yeah, Gregory was under Glitchtrap's control. it's also kinda heavily implied that Patient 46 was the one who killed all the therapists, because Vanessa and Patient 46 had tapes of them in therapy.
Hello, Vanessa. How are you feeling today?
That was most likely a scheme Glitchtrap concocted to try to reinforce fake backstories he gave them. Like saying 46 had a rough childhood, for instance, even though that's not true.
None of what you said in your file about your parents was true.
Probably in order to make them more compliant, which we know is something Glitchtrap wants, since Vanny was literally Googling how to induce compliance in human subjects. But yeah, the therapy did not take, since the therapists were too curious and had to be eliminated. So, Gregory here has a kill count. At this point, we get to the plot of Security Breach. Gregory has been freed from Glitchtrap's control. As for how Gregory broke out, well, it's theorized he used the Balloon Boy arcade machine, since that machine has a glitched out game in it, and there is a precedent for people breaking out of Glitchtrap's control using arcade machines, a la Princess Quest. That being said, Gregory wakes up confused in the Pizzaplex, and seeing Gregory causes Freddy to break free from Glitchtrap's programming. Maybe it's because GGY had been removed from the system, and seeing this anomaly was just too much for poor Freddy. I mean, that's a solid possibility, and it's the one I'm going with. I mean, there are other theories for what's going on with Freddy, though, but I'll be sure to mention those later. Anyways, at this point, Freddy and Gregory are working together, and the rest of the game is Freddy and Gregory trying to survive the night as they find a way to escape the Pizzaplex while avoiding killer animatronics and Vanny. And I will mention, though, that throughout the night, Gregory is just laying the smackdown on these animatronics like he is actually a menace. So here we get to the ending of Security Breach, and there are a lot of different endings, but it's pretty widely accepted that the canon ending is either the Burntrap ending or the Princess Quest ending. So in the Burntrap ending, Gregory goes down to the sinkhole in the Pizzaplex and finds the remnants of the FNAF 6 pizzeria, aka the place that was burned down and killed everyone. Here, he encounters two things. The first is the Tangle, also colloquially known as the Blob, which is just a giant tentacle monster made of parts of the previous animatronics in the franchise. Now, this is very obviously the molten mess of animatronics left behind after the fire, and while the people in the fire moved on, the Tangle likely got possessed by the agony left behind from them all burning to death. The second thing we encounter here is the final boss of the game named Burntrap, who looks a lot like a burned version of Springtrap. Or I guess Scraptrap, since this is, like, we're talking about FNAF 6. But that's all I'm really going to say about Burntrap for now. I'll talk more about who he is and where he comes from later. So in the Burntrap ending, you fight Burntrap for a while, then he gets scooped up by the Tangle, and the Tangle, moving around, causes the destruction of the Pizzaplex, and Gregory and Freddy escape. Now, the Princess Quest ending is a little more straightforward. By playing all three Princess Quest arcade machines, you free Vanny from Glitchtrap's control, and Vanessa returns to normal. In this ending, Freddy's body is destroyed, but Vanessa, Gregory, and Freddy's head escape the Pizzaplex and get ice cream. I'll talk more about which of these two endings I think is canon later on, but for now, no, it's just definitely one of the two. At this point, we arrive at the VR game Help Wanted 2. In this game, you play as a technician at the Pizzaplex, in what appears to be before, during, and right after the events of Security Breach. We know this because the different states the animatronics appear in throughout this game, from Freddy getting a checkup, which is definitely before Security Breach, all the way to their shattered forms from right before Ruin. Halfway through the game, it is revealed we are wearing a Vanny mask, since that's apparently something all technicians wear, and once we take off this mask, we find out we are in the remnants of the FNAF 6 pizzeria. At this point, I think it's pertinent to talk about the identity of our player character here. It's pretty widely accepted that the player character of Help Wanted 2 is likely the father of Cassie, the main character of FNAF Ruin. In that game, Cassie states her dad has a Faz wrench, loves Bonnie, and disappeared. In this game, we are a technician with a Faz wrench who seems to like Bonnie, since in one of the endings we encounter a Bonnie mask that we say looks familiar, and it's also stated several times in the game that we look like we have kids.
Now, you look like you got kids.
So it all seems to add up. Now, Help Wanted 2 has two endings. In one of them, we play the game Princess Quest 4, and in the end, go inside the game, and after going down the elevator from Sister Location, hand a Glitchtrap plushie to Vanny, who crushes it in her hands. And according to the interview with Steelwool, we know that this was the death of Glitchtrap.
This is, the end of Glitchtrap.
Yeah. So it is the end of Glitchtrap. Squished. Gone.
Yeah.
The second ending consists of us assembling Fazbear Voltron toys or something, and then we get a cutscene of something, not Burntrap, leaving Burntrap's charging pod before we get taken by staff bots and turned into the mask bot from the beginning of FNAF Ruin, aka the one who gives Cassie the Vanny mask at the start of that game. Now, since the Steelwool interview confirms Glitchtrap is dead, and Maskbot obviously exists, that means both endings are canon, with Glitchtrap's death probably happening first, since we can't beat Princess Quest 4 if we're currently Maskbot. And as for what this all means, the first one is pretty straightforward. Vanny kills Glitchtrap. But Vanny's not supposed to be around anymore. We know the Princess Quest games have to be played in order, and Princess Quest 3 frees Vanessa from Vanny. That being said, according to the book B7, secondary personalities are able to exist without a host. Add in the fact that there's Vanny graffiti everywhere in Ruin, and it seems likely that Vanny is still around. So if we take Vanny to just be a manifestation of the Mimic 1 virus inside Vanessa, then it's possible the Vanny personality still exists inside the Vanny mask, and is probably trying to find a new host. And Vanny killed Glitchtrap to be free from his control. In my eyes, that's the most likely possibility. Maybe that's also why Moon is there, since he's another alternate personality created by the Mimic 1 virus, but like I said, this is just a theory. I just happen to think it's the most likely theory. As for the Voltron ending, I think that was Cassie's dad being tricked into reintroducing the virus to the Pizzaplex, but since Glitchtrap is dead, the virus reverted back to just being the original Mimic 1 virus, which is why the Mimic, a robot introduced in FNAF Ruin, seems to be controlling the Pizzaplex after this point, and Helpy, who's being controlled by Glitchtrap up till now has orange eyes like the Mimic in Ruin. And if you're curious about that one time Helpy and the Mimic kinda sorta seem to argue, keep in mind the Mimic virus seems to exaggerate personalities, as shown in the Storyteller, so that's likely an exaggerated Helpy arguing with the Mimic, since the Mimic so far only seems to be able to influence the animatronics, but not directly control them like Glitchtrap. Now, before we move on from Help Wanted 2, there's one last thing I want to address, which is the repeated line from that game, which is,
What makes you so special?
so what does make Cassie's dad so special? For starters, he says the Bonnie mask we found looks familiar. Many have taken this to mean that he was the Bonnie bully from way back during the Bite of 83. Also, in Help Wanted, they tell you to remember Jeremy, and one of the trophies in Help Wanted 2 is Remember Jeremy. Some have taken this to mean that Cassie's dad is Jeremy from Help Wanted 1, aka the developer that cut his face to escape being possessed by Glitchtrap. Additional evidence for this is that Cassie states her dad loves the Freddy and Friends TV show, being stated to have collected the lunchboxes, especially Bonnie, and in Ruin, on the sign about the Freddy and Friends TV show, the name Jeremy is spray painted. Plus, the boy who possessed Bonnie was named Jeremy, so maybe the Bonnie bully, aka Cassie's dad, being named Jeremy is a reference to that. Finally, there's a theory that Jeremy, aka Cassie's dad, worked at the sister location bunker before Michael, since on night 1 of that game, Baby mentions,
Someone before you crafted it into a hiding place, and it worked for him.
implying a previous worker survived working there. And when Baby sees Michael, she says,
I don't recognize you.
but in Help Wanted 2, when she sees Cassie's dad, she says,
I recognize you.
not to mention, the sister location elevator showing up is pretty sus. In short, Cassie's dad may be special because it's possible he was the Bonnie bully and possibly a survivor of the sister location bunker in the Help Wanted VR game. At this point, we get to Ruin. Here, the Pizzaplex has been shut down due to, well, being ruined. It's here that we meet a little girl named Cassie, who apparently receives a distress call from her friend Gregory, aka the boy from Security Breach, saying he is trapped in the Pizzaplex and she has to come rescue him. Upon arriving in the Pizzaplex, she receives a Vanny mask from Maskbot, who she doesn't know is actually what remains of her missing father. And when she puts on this mask, they inject her with an occipital nerve chip that allows her to see/interact with all the AR VR stuff going on at the Pizzaplex. Here she's guided by Helpy, and occasionally Gregory, as she makes her way through the Pizzaplex, avoiding the shattered animatronics, who look like that due to Gregory beating the brakes off them in the last game. Now, during this game, she is also followed by a creepy VR bunny that goes by the name Mixus, and throughout the game, we shut down the nodes that are powering it. Eventually, Cassie finally reaches the basement where Gregory's trapped, and we get there by going past the place Burntrap was and going all the way down until we find a hidden room. Here, she finds Gregory's backpack, a cement wall, and a really old computer labeled Mixus. And following Gregory's instructions, she deactivates the Mixus machine and destroys the cement wall. but it's revealed that on the other side, it wasn't Gregory like we thought, but a murderous robot who has been mimicking Gregory's voice the entire time. This is the Mimic. The Mimic is a robot in the origin of the Mimic 1 virus. He was originally designed to mimic things and transform his body to fit into several animatronic suits, but unfortunately, the Mimic was violent and was locked in a basement with the Mixus protocol keeping him there. But currently, Cassie has deactivated the Mixus program and freed the Mimic. Now, while running from the Mimic, we get in contact with the real Gregory, and when we arrive in an elevator while trying to escape from the Mimic, Gregory, not wanting to risk the Mimic escaping, drops the elevator shaft, leaving Cassie to die. And that's where Ruin leaves off. Now, technically, there are 2 other endings, but I feel like most people agree that this is the likeliest ending to have happened. Now, technically, this is the end of the timeline, so from this point forward, all I'm going to be doing is my best to solve some of the unresolved mysteries introduced up to this point. The first is which security breach ending is canon. On one hand, the Burntrap ending is the only ending that is fully animated, but the Princess Quest ending is the only one that has 3 stars. On the surface, it seems like the Princess Quest ending is canon due to having Freddy's body in the same place as that ending in Ruin, but this Freddy has a prototype stamp on his foot, so it's probably not the same Freddy. On top of that, the Princess Quest machine has a giant sword through it, which would imply that ending was canon, but the only one we've ever seen use a sword like that was Cassie's dad. Finally, Ruin has drawings of all the other endings implying they didn't happen, and adding on to that, Burntrap's pod is empty, which some take to mean he doesn't exist, especially since Burntrap was originally supposed to be like a hallucination or something and not move.
Originally, Burntrap was never supposed to move.
That being said, the Tangle does show up in Ruin, so we know that they likely exist. Plus, Ruin has all 3 animatronics be shattered, which only happens in the Burntrap ending. So in the end, both endings are likely. Gregory could have done the Burntrap ending, and Cassie's dad, who's very likely the employee who's trying to beat Princess Quest, could have just beaten the Princess Quest games off-screen. But the opposite is also true. They could have done the Princess Quest ending, and then off-screen did the Burntrap ending, which is why Burntrap is gone, and the Tangle is loosed, and the pizzeria is destroyed. And Gregory knows what Burntrap looks like. Then again, maybe the Tangle just scooped up Burntrap on his own, and Gregory only remembers what they look like because he got his memories back from when he was under Glitchtrap's control, which would explain how he knew about the Mimic. Plus, in Ruin, the Burntrap room isn't crumbling or burnt, and in the Vanny ending, the mask is left behind, and in Ruin, the mask is still around. All in all, I would say both endings have a lot of evidence, but if I had to pick one, I would say the Princess Quest ending happened, but the Burntrap ending, or at the very least the Tangle snatching Burntrap, likely happened off-screen. Next up, when does security breach take place? Well, there is a calendar, so that narrows down the possible years, and there's also a poster that says Freddy Masquerade 2035, so it's at least 2035. This year also fits in with the calendar, by the way. The only wrench in this is that there are quarterly Faz Life magazines left around the Pizzaplex, and yet each issue says Spring Edition, making it seem like this is an annual magazine. So if that's true, that means this magazine has been in publication for 19 years. So if we take this to mean that 19 years have passed since the FNAF 6 fire, that means the earliest it could be is 2042, since FNAF 6 is in 2023. But keep in mind, 2046 is the earliest year that matches up with the calendar after this point. That being said, it is possible that they started the magazine in 2016 when they were building Fazbear's Fright, since the owners trying to cash in on the brand's reputation to create a horror attraction would definitely fit in with it being the same owners that would create horror games making fun of their company before a relaunch. But keep in mind there are 2 number 19s with different titles, so maybe they are just typos, and maybe Spring Edition wasn't supposed to be on all of them. In short, while it's possible the year is 2046, currently, I'm putting my money on Security Breach taking place in 2035. We also know that in Help Wanted, the Pizzaplex was already under construction, with a billboard saying it's coming soon and was now hiring. And in GGY, they state the Pizzaplex wasn't around a couple years ago. So let's assume the Pizzaplex has only been around for about 2 years. That means Help Wanted probably took place around 2033, with FNAF AR taking place shortly after due to Vanny's emails, and then Security Breach in 2035, with Help Wanted 2 during that same year, and Ruin a few months after Security Breach. Now, the next major question is, what is Burntrap? In the Endo daycare room, we see bunny ears spray painted on an Endo, and a lot of people have taken this to mean that Glitchtrap wants a body, and that Burntrap is that body. The main question lies in whether that is William Afton's body. On the surface, it seems that way since it's a burned body that resembles Afton, found in a place where Afton's body was burned. That being said, Scraptrap did look different though. But you can kinda handwave that away by saying Vanessa fixed up the body somehow. The wrenchiness comes if you believe in the books being canon, because in the books, Afton's body explodes, so it can't be his body. Of course, if you believe in the books, you can likely handwave that away by saying this is just a body made to resemble Afton, even though that seems like way more of a stretch than it just being Afton's body, in my opinion. The final argument here is that was actually just a mimic, because the mimic doesn't just mimic voices, his body sorta changes shape to fit inside different animatronic suits. So the theory is that the mimic was Burntrap, and after they kill Glitchtrap, Burntrap just kinda gives up the Afton identity and becomes the mimic. The problem here is that the mimic and Burntrap look fundamentally different. And even in Ruin, they reinforced the Burntrap design with Gregory's drawing, when if they wanted to imply that they were the same, they could have just made the mimic either look like Burntrap or made the drawing look like the mimic. There's also the theory that maybe Burntrap was a VR illusion, and Gregory only saw Burntrap because he had the occipital nerve chip from previously wearing the mask. This, of course, is based on the Scott interview, where it seems Burntrap was originally going to be nothing more than a hallucination. So maybe it was Glitchtrap in the mimic's body that Gregory saw and not Burntrap. In the end though, me personally, I think the most likely answer is that that's just Afton's body with Glitchtrap in it and the mimic is separate. That's not to say that Glitchtrap and the mimic aren't related though, because Glitchtrap is made with the mimic virus, but I don't think he's the physical mimic. In short, the mimic body plus the mimic 1 virus equals the mimic. The mimic virus plus Afton's agony equals Glitchtrap, and Glitchtrap plus Afton's body equals Burntrap. Simple enough, right? Regardless, Glitchtrap is dead, and Burntrap is likely in the tangle.
Well, we won't be seeing him again.
Next up, what's up with the post-it room? Now, the post-it room was likely them trying to train the mimic to be a new body for Glitchtrap, which is why the sticky notes seem to show a robot developing sentience. That would also likely explain why there's evidence of 2 people communicating in the sticky notes, with those 2 likely being Vanessa and the mimic. That would also explain a table of staff bots arranged like the Afton family, because they were trying to train the mimic to be like Afton, to be Glitchtrap's new body. But in the end, it didn't work because, obviously, and then they sealed him away. And at that point, they likely started working on creating Burntrap. That's right, I think this happened before Security Breach, when Gregory was still Patient 46. Because that would explain when Vanessa and Gregory trapped the mimic, while also fitting in with the fact that Gregory, after escaping, very much does not want to return to the Pizzaplex. And if they first encountered the mimic after Security Breach, it wouldn't explain what Gregory was doing at the Pizzaplex, since he would have no reason to return. Now we get to the wall code. What's up with this thing, right? Well, in Security Breach, there's a hidden room that looks exactly like Michael's room from Sister Location, so either the room was preserved or this is a replica. That being said, in this room there are 2 things. The first being Vanessa and Patient 46's therapy tapes, and the second being a code on the wall, which when translated, spells out the following poem. In essence, this poem is telling someone to defeat the animatronics. It's important to note this room has a small door, so Gregory was probably the one this poem was intended for. So the question here is who left the wall code? The way I see it, there are 2 options here. Either Vanessa left the message for Patient 46 before she was fully corrupted, and that's when Gregory starts trying to free himself, or this is a message from Patient 46 to Gregory, since he might have known that once he breaks free with the Balloon Boy arcade machine, he would wake up confused in the Pizzaplex. So the wall code was left so he would remember what he has to do. Next up, who created the Mimic? Well, the Mimic appears to be very old, especially since the Mixus machine looks super outdated. But as to who created it, the short answer is, we don't know. The long answer is that in the books, a guy named Edwin did. It's debatable whether the books are canon though, so the possible candidates are likely either Edwin, Henry, or Afton. Also, the person who created the Mimic likely also created the Mixus machine. That being said, I should also mention that at some point, Cassie's dad likely found out about the Mimic and upgraded the Mixus machine in response to the Mimic trying to escape. And we know it was him because there's a bunch of nodes at the Pizzaplex which are modern, even though the Mixus machine is old. Plus, one of those nodes is in Roxy's mask, and we know Cassie's dad gave that mask to Roxy. How does all the AR/VR stuff work? Security Breach takes place in the future, so the mask is probably explained by just AR/VR technology coming an absurdly long way. That being said, in Ruin, there are objects in the real world you can't pass through, but using the Vanny mask makes them go away. But obviously, putting the mask on doesn't make a real object not real anymore. And we know the occipital nerve chip can make us see things in the real world, like Helpy. So the theory goes that the occipital nerve chip is designed to make us wear the vanity mask more often by making us see things that aren't there. And a possible example of this is when that prototype Freddy goes away when we put on the mask. So there's a chance the prototype Freddy doesn't even really exist. Is Golden Freddy still around? In the files of Security Breach, the princess from the Princess Quest arcade machine is named Cassidy, so the theory here is that since Cassidy, aka Golden Freddy, was latched onto Afton's soul performing UCN, perhaps Cassidy's agony or remnant or whatever came along with the circuit board that created Glitchtrap, and created the princess in the arcade machines, which is why beating the Princess Quest games frees you from Glitchtrap's control. It should be noted though, that when people found the name Cassidy in the files, they changed the name in the code. Now that either means it's not canon, or it can mean it is canon and they aren't trying to give away too much in the end. In short, it's debatable. Is the puppet still around? In the files, there's something called Charlie Door, and they never changed the name of that one, by the way. And the lights in the Pizzaplex kind of looks like the marionette's arms, and on top of that, the Nightmare staff bots also kind of look like Nightmarion. And there are Nightmarion plushes everywhere. So this led to the theory that since Lefty was never shown burning, and since there's no fourth burner room, maybe Henry didn't burn her in the FNAF 6 fire, and she's still around. And I hope that isn't the case, but it technically is a possibility. However, at least in terms of the staff bots, Help 1 and 2 confirms they just kind of start to look like that when they're put under too much stress. So who knows, maybe this is all just a coincidence or something, and we're reading too much into it. That being said, there was a Nightmarion plushie inside Princess Quest 4, and I have absolutely no explanation for that. I'm not even sure Nightmarion really even existed in the first place. It was in the Halloween DLC of FNAF 4, which was stated to not be canon, but maybe exists as DLC that the game developer made. Then it showed up in FNAF World and UCN, but those are not real. They're just like a mindscape or fake creations in a purgatory-like place. Then of course, Nightmarion shows up in Help Wanted, but that's literally a video game. But now there's a plushie of quite possibly a fictional character showing up hidden inside the Princess Quest 4 arcade game thing. And I've absolutely no idea what that's supposed to be referencing to. Even if the puppet was still around, it would most likely be just the puppet. It wouldn't be Night Marionette, you know what I'm saying? So I really don't know what's up with that. Maybe this is just an Easter egg, maybe it's something super critical to the lore we haven't solved yet. All I'm gonna say is that at this point, anything is really possible. And if I had to guess, I would say that maybe a little bit of Charlie's agony was scanned into Glitchtrap as well, and that's why the plushies in Princess Quest. I mean, that would also explain why it feels like the Nightmarion has a presence in the Pizzaplex, since it's maybe part of the system controlling it. Is Freddy possessed? So the theory goes that Gregory and Vanessa was groomed by Glitchtrap to be stand-ins for the crying child and Elizabeth. And Freddy snaps out of his programming when he sees Gregory because Michael is possessing Freddy, and seeing the quote-unquote crying child snapped him out of it. The only real evidence for this theory is Freddy's speech when going down to the basement, especially when he says, "I am not me." But that speech, paired with him later saying Burntrap is trying to take control of him, could be merely saying that Glitchtrap has taken control of the animatronics in the past. Ultimately, I would say that he likely is not possessed, but technically, we can't rule anything out. So what's the deal with the wet floor bots? In Ruin, there are 32 wet floor bots, and every time we shut one down, something called a soul counter in the files goes down by 1. So we're left with the question here, where did all these souls come from? I think it probably came from the all-staff meeting, where it's heavily implied they killed all the workers and replaced them with staff bots. This maybe also includes the 5 therapists that were killed, and that's likely what explains the missing residents newspaper they're referencing to. That's just my best guess on it, though. What happened to Glamrock Bonnie? In Security Breach, Bonnie is missing, and in Ruin, we find his corpse. So, short answer, he was murdered. As for the context of what happened with Glamrock Bonnie, we know that since employees sent emails about their not having a response ready to explain Bonnie's absence, his death likely happened suddenly, and while the employees were still around. But I propose maybe he saw something he shouldn't have, like maybe he found out they were killing the employees. Obviously not the all-staff meeting yet, but maybe a handful of employees or the therapist or something, and just snapped him out of his Glitchtrap programming, kinda like Freddy. And at this point, Glitchtrap saw him as a threat, and likely possessed Monty and killed Bonnie, which is why Bonnie is surrounded by the floorbots, because he tried to protect them. We also know Monty killed Bonnie, because he was last seen going to Monty Golf, And then the gutter ball in Help Wanted 2 is Bonnie's ball being crushed by Monty's ball. Plus, Bonnie's head was crushed by a bowling ball in FNAF Ruin. Plus, Monty has the claws necessary to do the crime. And he replaced Bonnie. That being said, I don't know if I really buy the theory that Monty was jealous, because we know Monty looked up to Bonnie. Of course, that could just be propaganda, but regardless, that's why I said Glitchtrap took him over, kind of like Freddy in the basement. And we know Glitchtrap has taken over the animatronics in the past, because Freddy remembers coming down to the sinkhole before and saying, "I am not me." But yeah, that's what I think happened with Bonnie and the wet floor bots. Finally, what is Fallfest? First, I'm going to say all the information we have about Fallfest. So, Fallfest's first appearance is in the Curse of Dreadbear DLC, and from there we learned there was a Fallfest in 1983, in the woods of the FNAF 4 house, since we literally see the house. There's also a windmill there, and we saw the inside of a barn, which seems to have had a birthday party. In the Foxy corn maze, we also see a water tower and a windmill. And in Help Wanted 2, we have a poster of Fallfest 1970 confirming that it was in autumn. And they also show like a big circus tent-like thing, right? So in Help Wanted 2, in the prize claw machine, we get a poster of Freddy and the gang with the marionette in the background. And they're stylized like they're Freddy and Friends on tour designs. The Faster Blast game in Help Wanted 2 also appears to be part of Fallfest, since it has pumpkins and hay, in addition to having the same water tower and windmill. And also of note in this game that the animatronic Carney looks almost exactly like Lefty. Finally, we have the Carousel game in Help Wanted 2, which also seems old-fashioned. It also seems to have the FNAF 2 designs, which were based on toys, and this game features Sun and Moon. Here you can also find pumpkin, hay, and a lantern, and if you go out of bounds on the carousel, you see the same windmill and the same water tower, and a skeleton of a barn, which matches the barn from the Curse of Dreadbear. And also of note is that both Faster Blast and the Carousel game ends in fire, and if you go out of bounds on the carousel, it seems like the fire originated from the barn. If I was going to take all this information and make a theory about what happened, I'd say Fallfest was likely an ongoing carnival thing, at least in the years 1970 and 1983. And maybe Fallfest 1970 was where Fredbear's singing show made its debut. I don't know if it was an actual bear, or maybe it was just a suit, since it would fit in with it being the suit era at this point. Around this time, Bonnie is likely created, probably looking a lot like Glitchtrap's hand-sewn suit. And around this point, Henry would create Chica's Party World, featuring battery-powered animatronics like the mediocre melodies. The evidence for this is that Chica's Party World was mentioned in Sister Location, which is why Chica wasn't in that game, since she was in her own delivery service. And the theory goes that there was possibly also previously a Chica's Party World, with Chica being associated with barn animals in the Puppet Carver book, possibly relating to the mediocre melodies. This would also tie in with them being really old looking and having battery packs, and being clearly made by Henry, and Nedbear also being called out as a ripoff in the character encyclopedia, culminating in the idea that Chica's Party World, featuring the mediocre melody, was competing with Fredbear's singing show before the two merged to create Fredbear's Family Diner. Then we get to the Secret of the Mimic game in 1979. Now, I don't really know what's going to happen here since the game isn't out yet. Maybe that's when they create the Mimic? That might also be the year Fredbear's Family Diner was created, since that would track with information from the Silver Eyes. This would also tie in with what we heard from the Secret of the Mimic demo, that there are Fredbear's Family Diner posters in that games, as well as signs saying Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is coming soon. We then know in 1983 there was another Fallfest, and we also know from FNAF 4 that there was a Fredbear and Friends TV show with a 1983 copyright. And Security Breach has the TV show Freddy and Friends on Tour. So that was possibly a related show, and seeing the four main characters plus the puppet show up in the Fallfest poster in the same designs, it's possible they made their debut at Fallfest, possibly as suits, to see if the public would be interested in the characters, before eventually spinning off into their own show and restaurant, Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. Getting back to Fallfest, Eclipse was probably also there due to the carousel ride in Help Wanted 2, and the Mimic was probably there as well, acting as the first real animatronic that can move around. So the theory here goes that they all debut at Fallfest 83, but during a birthday party in the barn, the Mimic is probably responsible for a fire breaking out, which shuts down Fallfest. This leads to the Mixes machine being created to keep the Mimic trapped, and then they forget about him. And that's my best guess for the story of Fallfest. Also, I highly doubt Carney was there. I think he was just based on Lefty for the purpose of the VR thing going on in Help Wanted 2, aka the mini games which are using VR for a combination of work, training, and games. I think this since Carney has the same endoskeleton as Lefty, which is way more advanced than the mediocre Melody endos. But yeah, there we go. A whole timeline of the new games, as well as my best attempt at answering all the major questions left behind by those games. I hope you enjoyed. Be sure to smash that subscribe button, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.